Good.
And we are ready to rock and roll, and we lost the commissioner. I'm not sure that Charlie's that important.
Oh, no.
Charlie, we're starting. Are you important? No? All right. Well, I want to welcome everybody for coming. Wright County Soil and Water. I understand we also have some people from DNR here who I will ask to speak a little bit later on for some opinions. Put them on the spot, which is why they get paid the big bucks. At this point, I will turn it over to Alicia for you to start your presentation.
Well, Chris Hector from the Greater Lake Sylvia Association will be starting us off.
All right. So the first thing I'd like to do is...
That's the other thing. In order for this system to work so that people will be able to hear, you'll have to speak into the microphones. Otherwise, the live streaming won't work at all.
Perfect. My name is Chris Hector. I am from Lake Sylvia, but also I'm the president of the nonprofit that started off this project. The project itself is managed and overseen by Wright County Soil and Water. We have Alicia O'Hare and Luke Johnson from Soil and Water that will also be speaking. This is quite a large project. There are many moving parts and many partners that have helped us get here. I wanted to thank all of the organizations, government units, and other resources that have been instrumental in getting us to this point. The Wright Regional Inspection Program, a little overview about it. The spread of aquatic invasive species is one of the most significant challenges facing us as Minnesotans. AIS can adversely impact property values, health and safety, government tax bases, tourism, and lake ecology. This program in particular comes from a provision within state law that allows the creation of regional inspection systems.
Just asking in the back, are you hearing okay?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Good.
And ultimately our goal is to preserve the quality of the lake so that everyone can fish, boat, pontoon, swim, and enjoy the lakes, not only for ourselves today, but for generations to come. Fighting AIS requires effort from state, county, lake associations, and the boating public. We all have to work cooperatively to address this issue. The Wright Regional Inspection Program was started in late 2017, and it was a first in the state of Minnesota to test if regional inspections provide value and boater education and cost efficiency. A fundamental component of the Wright Regional Inspection Program was done here back in 2017. It requires an ordinance that was passed by this body
Doing the changes.
to mandate that if we set up a regional inspection program, that for those lakes that are involved, there is a mandatory inspection.
Is this on the PowerPoint also?
Well, it's not the next slide, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, you did it in advance. Yeah, there it is.
Apologies.
That's all right, again, you'll be able to watch this later on and see this PowerPoint presentation at any time that you'll want.
So Wright County entered into a delegation agreement with the DNR. And I highlighted a couple of elements out of that delegation agreement, which has been in place, I believe, for 5 years. It's around the same time that the state aid to counties came about. The purpose of the agreement is to enhance Minnesota's capacity to prevent the spread of AIS by enabling local government entities to perform AIS inspections and manage access to the water resources in keeping with the 3 principles stated above. And the 3 principles are providing access and without discrimination. The second part of this was that the governmental unit, which in this case is Wright County Soil and Water, will provide 1 or more inspection stations established under the program with trained and supervised certified inspectors who will exercise inspection authorities in accordance with current DNR procedures and manuals. So these form the foundations of what we've done here. So again, a state statute and a delegation agreement with the DNR. As part of the legislature's creation of the state aid to local governments, Wright County, over the 5 years that we've been doing this, has received $1.27 million to support this effort. This program, the Regional Inspection Program, is an attempt to get the best value of that money that we're going to spend. So we're looking to optimize that, to take and to leverage it as much as we can.
I think we went to sleep, so just make sure you can.
Okay. Well, how about the lake associations? The lake associations have a part to play in fighting AIS as well, and they're an important partner in this. Concordia produced a study of over 500 lake associations in Minnesota and determined that those lake associations are contributing $6.25 million a year to take care of the lakes. They contribute 1.2 million volunteer hours per year. And so leveraging this is an important part of the public policy in trying to solve this problem. Lake associations contribute $400,000 to fish stocking, for example. And so they're an active partner and one that we need to energize. In the Wright County Regional Inspection Program, something a little bit closer to home, through May of this year, we had contributed over 2,000 volunteer hours in setting up, managing, and facilitating this program. The contributions in 2018 were $40,000 towards this important work. There I go.
Got it, okay.
All right. And that $40,000 was to the RIP program just itself. If you look at the broader aspect of what lake associations are doing in your communities, looking at 8 lakes over 2 years, the lakes shown in this graph contributed $422,000. And that's going to access monitoring, it's going to weed treatment, and other efforts to preserve and protect this valuable Minnesota resource. Alicia, do you want to try?
Yeah.
Just advance it for me. Great. So what are the goals of the Wright Regional Inspection Program? We're trying to demonstrate that you can provide 100% coverage for the partner lakes. Now that 100% sounds good, but it sounds even better when you take a look at what we're actually providing in the status quo, the at-the-ramp programs. Another important component of the program is to better utilize the available dollars. The DNR study upon which this program was based predicted that regional inspections would be 10 times more cost-effective than at the ramp. And it just makes common sense. If you take a typical lake, if you have multiple accesses, two things are going to happen. One is it's going to be hard to staff those multiple accesses. And the second thing that's going to happen is that staff is going to be mostly idle. Not every day is the 4th of July. There's a lot of Tuesdays and Thursdays in that. And on those days, utilization of that resource you're putting at the ramp is very low. If you collect that resource and you put it in a central location, now I can leverage that. I can't do that at the ramp. There's no way to utilize that service. But if you centrally locate them, you can tap into that. This is the value of consolidating everything to a regional center. I can make better use of the dollars you're going to spend anyway for inspections. In this program, it's referred to as a three-lake pilot, but in addition to that, we took on decontamination for the entire county. So all of the expense and the resources available from soil and water towards decontamination were included, and we're paying for that as part of this program. But in 2017, we had 40 days that we could not afford to provide decontamination services. We changed that in 2018, so decontamination service was there from sunup to sundown every day of the boating season. An important concern was, from this group, from ourselves, was keeping wait times low. And when Alicia talks about how we did in 2018, you'll see that we did very well at doing that. So let's talk about the problem with AIS monitoring today at the ramp. This is a graph of 2017 for Pleasant Lake, one of the three lakes in the study. The very small 4% bar there is how much of the available boating hours we actually could staff with inspections. So 4% clearly is not preventing anything from going into that lake. You can do education with 4%, but you can't prevent invasives from entering the waters. Next slide. So what is the solution? And I referred to this earlier. This is a graph of what you see typically at an inspection site. The bars, the green part of the bar is inspections. The blue part of the bar is decontaminations. And those are weighted a little bit higher because they take longer. And this shows you what is happening day to day. The value of regional inspections is not going to be found on the 4th of July or Memorial Day or fishing opener, okay? The value is going to be found on the low-volume Tuesdays, because I can add additional lakes to this regional inspection site, and for all those low-volume days, I don't have to add any more resource. I already have the resource. It's sitting there, it's untapped, it's available for use. So that's where you get the efficiency out of regional inspections. And as you can see, you can think of it this way, all the white parts of this graph, that's available excess capacity that you're not using today. So that's the basic premise of regional inspections. I'm going to hand this off to Alicia, and she's going to talk about 2018.
Right. So I'm just if you hit escape, Luke, it will. Luke's just going to transition the presentation over for me. So basically, I'm going to give that synopsis of what happened in 2018 with our operations. Just as a quick reminder, we operated from May 10th this year until October 31st. We did have a late ice out. Thank you, Mother Nature, for the extra ice fishing. So. There we go. Okay. So just a very, very quick overview, reminder at the pre-pilot years from 2015 through 2017, which are the years we have data for, the inspectors were at the ramp, and the decontamination station was off-site. It was on Poplar Avenue, just off of Highway 55. All our operations were entirely budget dependent, and that budget came from the local AIS fund, with the administration primarily being paid for through the Wright Soil and Water, just in staff time, a little bit from the AIS fund for the admin. And then during the pilot, we had ordinance requiring mandatory entrance inspections on Lake Sylvia, Lake John, Lake Pleasant, where the boater had to go to the inspector, and then decontamination was available either as a courtesy or if it became legally required. And just a couple of quick highlights about 2018. The average wait time was only 30 seconds, which is pretty much the time that it took the inspectors to walk out of the trailer and greet the boater. So you didn't have to wait for the other inspection to finish most of the time. And then we saw 1,782 additional entering inspections compared to 2017. And we saw 92.5% compliance with the ordinance, and that's a comparison of the number of inspections that were done to the number of calls to law enforcement. And even with all of that, we still had 82% excess capacity. That's what Chris was just referring to, that the inspector, with the current staffing, they could do 82% more inspections. So more traffic can come. Yes, sir.
Alyssa, thank you. So what kind of trouble were, like, it's almost 1 out of 10 gives you some kind of trouble? You had to call the police on 1 out of 10, or what? The compliance that I'm looking at.
That's referring to just the comparison of the number of calls to law enforcement to the number of inspections. And I do have a slide a little bit later that will show all of those results. As you can, this is the RIP inspection you can see on the slide. We offered a comfortable office for the inspectors. That's the white trailer that's a little bit closer to us. It had AC, it had heat. So while it is nice to sit on the lake on some days, that nice, early June day and there's a little breeze, that's nice, but the dog days of July and August, sometimes it's nice to have air conditioning. And then also rainstorms and such, the inspectors enjoyed that. And it's not in this particular picture, we did build a shed for the decontamination unit and all of the stuff that goes with it. So that was nice and convenient, never had to be moved through the whole season. They, they just opened up the doors and the hoses all came out and it was perfect. So that was very nice. So the first thing that the regional inspection offers is that increase in coverage. Just to explain it a little bit, the pre-pilot, you only get coverage when the inspector is standing there at the ramp. And you could have as many as 5 inspectors working at once. We had 4 ramps that we monitored, and then the decontamination inspector. So they could all be working at the same time. With the regional inspections, the operations were always half hour before sunrise to half hour after sunset. Throughout the boating season, the mandatory nature of the ordinance gave you 24/7 coverage. And we only had 3 staff
24/7.
working at one time, and that includes the decontamination staff.
24/7, you mean not officially 24/7, because that would mean you're there
24 hours a day.
24 hours a day.
Correct. In theory, the idea is that you'd still be violating even if you launched at midnight, is the assumption, but the operations were still extended. So I just want to show you what the increase in coverage looks like in a graph. So just to give you a little orientation to all the graphs you're going to see, or most of the graphs you're going to see, blue is pre-pilot hours, and orange is regional inspections. So in the pre-pilot years, you can see those bars are very tiny, especially on Pleasant Lake. But in 2018, basically for all of those accesses, you have the orange bar. That is our operating hours for the regional inspection site. So it goes up very dramatically, especially for those lakes that weren't able to contribute additional hours the same way Lake Sylvia was able to add funds for inspection time. So there's a inspection hours, and slow me down if I'm going too fast. I'm just trying to keep it going. So inspection volume, again, during the pre-pilot, the inspectors only working at one ramp. They can only be at one place and one time. They are doing both entrance and exits at the time, and they should cover all of them. But with RIP, we have multiple ramps coming to one single location. And the ordinance only requires entering inspections. Exit inspections could be done. It's just hard to differentiate exactly which ones were, upon leaving and which ones were upon entering. And but the only requirement was there. And we have a little bit of our training that was there for an inspection that was going on. You can see the inspector talking to the boater. So this graph is only entering inspections for pre-pilot and then the regional inspection. Especially for Lake John and Lake Pleasant, you can see that there was an increase. The overall increase was 51%, and that's that 1,782 inspections I previously mentioned. And that's what we would expect to see. You're open longer, you're going to see more people or do more inspections. So that is what we expected to see, and especially when you combine them all, you see that benefit. Sylvia did, the Lake Association was generous to offer many hours of inspection, and they had almost 12-hour a day coverage through most of the boating season in the previous years. So the less than dramatic change there is to be expected, and that's why the increases on John and Pleasant are more startling. So I want to talk a little bit about inspections per hour. This is one of our measures that we think about. It's are the inspectors active? Are they sitting on their hands, or are they doing inspections, is really what we're getting to here. And this gets to, is the traffic going to that place? In pre-pilot, is it worth it for me to send an inspector to Pleasant on a Tuesday afternoon, and if you see higher inspections per hour, that's a good thing. But at RIP, is the traffic going to that place? Are they still busy? And that's what we're really looking for at inspections per hour. So again, the hours we're referring to here is when the inspector is actively at the ramp for pre-pilot. But for RIP, it's whenever the station is open. So it's the operating hours is when you calculate your hours. We did exclude any off-site inspections that were done in our inspections per hour calculations because they weren't at the station. They were someplace else. And then we have a few expectations with inspections per hour for what we wanted to see. First of all, if you have more coverage, you're going to have those times when, you know, there's not as many boaters going out, whether it's the rainy day or the later at night or early in the morning sort of thing, where there's just not as many people. We did not require exit inspections with regional inspections, so that's going to take out some of the inspectors' busyness. You know, they're at the ramp, they're inspecting some people when they go in and when they come out. So we would expect inspections per hour to be lower, but when you combine the lakes to one location, the inspections from each lake, then you would expect it to go up. So what happened as a result of these three possible influencers? And so this is the graph of inspections per hour throughout the year. So from May, October is the last one. You will notice there's an extra orange bar in October from 2017. That is when we first opened up the regional inspection site. And then an overall graph there at the end. And for the most part, inspections per hour was pretty similar to previous years. Which tells us that combining the lakes had the greater effect than, and in fact, it compensated for both the extra hours and the not requiring the exit inspections. So that was showed the benefit of the combination of lakes right there. We also looked at inspections per hour for the 4th of July. The different colors here are the different ramps. Just for your reference, this is the one graph that's a little bit different, and it's each year is an overall for the full week of 4th of July. So that's the Friday before the 4th of July till the Thursday after. So it's one full week for each year. And we see about the same trend. I remember, I think 4th of July this year itself was pretty rainy and the rest of the week was just hot. So it was just a hair lower than 2017, but you know that it's about the same and it follows about the same trend as previous one. So I did want to highlight that 4th of July there as well. Decontaminations, you can see our decontamination station there. Pre-pilot, again, it was off-site, but you could see it from 55. You could drive past, and what is that guy doing? Why is there all this mist in the air? Which was pretty nice. It had some visibility. But when there wasn't a decon, the inspector, the level 2 that was standing there, you know, waiting for the next decontamination to show up. With the regional inspection set, we still offered courtesy inspections. But it was at the same place that the inspections were taking place, which, number one, makes decontaminations potentially legally required. If you show up with an AIS on your boat or in violation of AIS statute, you really can't leave until that decontamination is complete, or a conservation officer is going to be knocking on your door. And it also allows the level 2s to be utilized for inspections, because you don't always have to be doing decontaminations. The downside is we did need a bigger site, and so it's no longer visible from Highway 55. There's just simply no avoiding that fact, but it's worth pointing out. Also worth noting with the decontaminations, we don't know which ones were legally required and which ones were, hey, can you come spray off my boat? Or, hey, you know I got some AIS, here's my permit to transport, because I just, I was on Clearwater or John all year and I need my boat cleaned. And absolutely, we'd love to do those, but we just can't differentiate between them. So our decontaminations in 2018 were down slightly. We had 332 in 2017 and 242 in 2018. One thing that, when we talked to inspectors about this a little bit, when we noticed the decline, and one thing that they mentioned was there was a particular person that was bringing a boat a lot. He was he happened to be a lake service provider, and he was just, hey, can you spray my boat? Hey, can you spray my boat? Just all the time. And he wasn't doing that in 2018. Not to say that he was violating anything. That's not necessarily, he just wasn't coming for every single boat he had anymore. And for comparison, I don't know, I can't verify this, but there was a license plate in 2017 that showed up 63 times at the decontamination site. And the most common license plate that showed up in 2018 showed up 7 times. So that is potentially one of the big factors there. So ordinance violations, the roving inspectors, this is an example of a drop box at the site. Roving inspectors would come up and empty the drop box of the tags and then compare those tags to the tow vehicles' receipts and their dashboard. And if there was anyone that didn't match or didn't have a receipt, then they would call law enforcement. So they called 429 times. And I received 404 reports from law enforcement. That's between the sheriff's office and the city of Annandale. The rovers contributed almost 1,600 hours of labor, which was $41,000. And law enforcement contributed 215 labor hours for $16,000. And just to note, the law enforcement was not covered by the RIP budget this year. That came out of the law enforcement's budget. And then the results. So this is the one graph that is not actually in the report. It is in reference to a table that is in the report, but the graph itself is not. So just for your reference, it is table 5 on page 15 that this one is referencing. So these are basically the possible results and interpretations that we made from the law enforcement results. So it starts up with that light blue slice in the top corner and works its way clockwise. First of all, the vehicle was not found. The rover reported a vehicle description and a plate, and when the sheriff's deputy showed up, it was no longer there. The second was a personal contact. The person happened to show up while the deputy was there, and they talked to them, explained the ordinance, and said, hey, next time, please do that. They often said in their reports that the person was apologetic, they didn't know, they'd comply in the future. Phone contact is very similar. The deputies often requested that the owners call them back, and for those that did, again, it's same thing, like, hey, you were in violation of this ordinance, we want to make sure you know about it, please follow it in the future. Oh yes, I'm sorry, I'll do that.
Mr. Chair, did they have any repeat offenders?
Yes.
In which way were they notified on the repeat offenders? And the number of them?
I'm sorry, the number's escaping me. I know of the 404 violations, there were 351 different plates.
Okay, 350. So
Or,
that's actually-
I'm sorry, 373 different plates, but some of the 373 includes anyone who is flagged as a non-violation. So, and I'll explain a non-violation in a
So
second.
roughly right around 40 to 50 could be potential reoffenders.
Right, and no one reoffended, I think 3 times was the most I saw any particular license plate.
And do they cite a reason for the reason not giving a citation?
It was not in the reports themselves.
Okay.
So I only had the reports to go off and made my interpretations from there. So just continuing where I was, we're in the yellow right now with prevented from entering. In this case, it's usually the deputy's already there responding to something and somebody shows up. And they're like, hey, you don't have your seal or your proof of inspection, you need to go to the station first. And so that the equipment didn't get to the water and they presumably went to the regional inspection station before they launched. The large purple one is obviously the most common by 2/3. This is a notice was left on the windshield. Rovers did leave notices for everybody, even the vehicles that were not found. This is the deputy left an additional, that bright orange notice that no one ever likes to see when you're parked anywhere, that says, hey, you had a problem, please give me a call. But they were just never followed up on because there wasn't a phone number available or something to that effect. The small green sliver is a deputy was reassigned. That particular deputy may have needed to go to a higher priority call, and that call was likely just given to somebody else. So they could be those repeats in there. And then the last one is no violation. This is, it was a DNR conservation officer's vehicle that is exempt from the ordinance, or that, oh, I had the proof of inspection under my visor, officer, I'm very sorry. So that they just recorded it as, my interpretation was that this wasn't actually a violation. Proper protocol may not have been followed, but technically they didn't violate. So the large number of notice left on windshields obviously needs some improvement, because we're not really making contact with them. We don't know how many people saw the notice or read that. And Chris will address that for the 2019 plan, but just this is an area for us to improve with some protocols, and we're working with law enforcement to make sure that future efforts are effective. So referring to tagging, this is the zip tie tag that was put on the boat and trailer. We had a return rate of 78.4%. Where those other tags went is a couple places. First of all, the boater could have decided to go to a different lake. They was like, I don't want to go to Sylvia, I'd rather go to Sugar or Mille Lacs or Lake of the Woods, whatever. So they would have just thrown that tag away. The tag could have missed the box in that the tag ended up on the floor of the tow vehicle, the glove box, or on the ground, that sort of thing. It just didn't make it. And then the final is if there was a data error, that somebody wrote something down wrong and the tag was just never matched up. So those are the possibilities. But of the tags that were returned, their average life was 1.4 days. And 87.8% were returned within 1 day. So that is from the time that it was given to the boater until the rover picked it up was less than a day. And then an additional 8.1%, or a total of 95.9%, were returned within a week, which leads us to believe that most people are doing it just before they're going to enter the lake. And not necessarily doing it far in advance, although our longest seal life that we recorded was 125 days. We conducted a user feedback survey. And the analysis of that was done by a third party. His name was Dr. David Fry, who's a PhD. We received 124 responses, but the questions were only asked in full once. The first question was, have you taken this survey before? If you answered yes, you were simply asked, do you have any additional comments, and utilize. We did also account for anybody who entered a not possible tag number, so they put in a bunch of zeros or fives or something, so we took those responses out. Ultimately, 124 responses were used for analysis here. Just some highlights of it: 80% rated the staff as courteous, and also another 80% knew that to go to the regional inspection station before they went to the landing. And 1 in 3 respondents agreed that the program increased their personal responsibility for the spread of aquatic invasive species, and 35% indicated that they were more likely to engage in AIS prevention practices in the future, such as making sure their drain plug was removed during travel, removing water from their boats, etc. Attitudes towards the program were divided. This is a direct question of how strongly do you oppose or support the program? And 53% oppose the program and 40% support the program. Among those groups, so tying it to a different identifier question, you were more likely to support the program if you had received AIS information while you were at the site, made more than 5 trips to the Annandale area to visit the lakes, live in the Annandale zip code, own lakeshore property, or the main purpose of visiting the lake was to cruise the lake as opposed to fishing. And then we also had open-ended comments. The elected officials have been provided with these along with the DNR. 72% of the open-ended comments were negative, 19 positive, and 9 were neutral or mixed. Again, all these interpretations were done by a third party and not by myself or any of our partners. We had 22 comments seeing it as an effort to privatize the lake, 17 in exit inspections, and then shouldn't protect infested lakes. I won't spend too much time on each of these. So these were just some of the most common complaints. And like, for example, the one where the inspections were not thorough enough, we tried to address that mid-year, made sure we talked to the inspectors and did different things to help improve that. So throughout the year, we were monitoring this user survey to try to improve the program. So finances, this particular slide is the setup of the program. We had, it's something new, you need to spend a little money just to get it going. I combined the 2017 finances with the 2018 finances so that you get the whole picture. First of all, we were lucky enough that the land was leased to us at no cost, or leased to Greater Lake Sylvia at no cost. But we had, additional equipment, some site creation that we purchased, and then the admin time ahead of the pilot being approved by the DNR was also included in this case. And so grand total, just to set it up, get it going, was just over $61,000. And then it's a whole other story to operate the particular site. And one thing that it should be highlighted here is this isn't what it costs to operate for 3 lakes. This is the minimum cost to operate. I mean, as we said, we had 82% extra capacity, and that was because we had minimum staffing. So this should really be looked at as this is what you would at least need to operate. But again, that also includes pilot. There's pilot influence here that sometimes you got to do more stuff because it's the first time, so you got to figure some things out. So it's hard to really know where that comes in. But overall, it costs $242,000 to operate regional inspections from May 10th through the 31st of October, and about half of that was just the inspector cost of labor and training. So the overall conclusions from this come down to the logistics worked. We had minimal wait times, as we noted, it was less than 30 seconds. Similar inspections to our to pre-pilot. 78% of the tags came back, and we were able to identify the violators, although we recognize there's improvements that can be made in the logistics, and we tried to make note. We increased the coverage dramatically, especially for the Pleasant and John. Ultimately, our conclusion is that if this program operates in 2018, you would get a better cost-benefit analysis if more lakes were included in the program, because it becomes more efficient. You're more utilizing that inspector labor.
You said 2018.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2019. If it were to operate in 2019, more lakes would allow you to use that excess capacity. You get a better cost-benefit analysis. And one thing to highlight is, though, that this program is not compatible with required exit inspections due to legislative and legal constraints, and should be pursued by, decision makers and partners to potentially change legislation. And then also the SWCD could pursue, hey, it's a good idea to go get an exit inspection, and simply encourage people to do it voluntarily. And that's the overall review of 2018. Chris Hector will go back and talk about potentials for 2019.
All right, so in 2019, what we wanted to do was take advantage, in 2019, what we wanted to do was take advantage of what we learned in the 2018 operational year. The biggest thing that we wanted to do, we initially started with 3 lakes, just because we knew we were going to take our bumps. We need to have a reasonable number that we could start off with as we work through the program. This was always envisioned as a regional effort, which should be available to all the lakes that are within the guidelines prescribed by the DNR. Adding lakes to the program has a number of benefits. If you recall, when I was showing you all the white part on that chart, all that unused capacity, any of that unused capacity you can take advantage of, costs you nothing, and buys you benefits. And so moving that traffic is our best opportunity to take advantage of that available capacity. It also moves lake dollars, as you recall from my earlier slides. Lake associations are very interested in participating in this program. We've got 5 additional lakes all signed up, just saying, tell me when I can get in. We have additional lakes that we're in conversation with. So there is a demand from other lakes for access to this program. If you allow those lakes to enter the program, you can tap that lake association contribution. And one of the things that we noticed in 2018 is with the At the Ramp program, there are some lakes that just say, why bother? It's too large of a task, particularly for smaller lakes, to even conceive about mounting an AIS inspection program. All the lakes within our program contribute something. And we do this, balanced on how much load they're going to bring into the system. But our feeling is that they'll have more ownership of the program if they contribute something. And many of these lakes are making large contributions. So those lake dollars go to the program, and correspondingly, Soil and Water has that state aid. They have at the ramp inspections, so if you move that lake into the program, there's some additional dollars that you can leverage. And all those dollars that you move into the program, again, if the 2012 DNR study is to be believed, and that's part of what we're doing, is you're getting better value for those dollars spent. Another component of the 2019 plan is to work on enforcement. So what happened in 2018 was law enforcement was going out to the ramps. We had rovers going out to the ramps. And when we came to this group to talk about what could be improved in 2018, both law enforcement and the program proposed that we not do that. It's a unnecessary duplication of effort. It takes travel time. And so we drafted a a revised enforcement schedule so that the rovers will continue to patrol the ramps. Law enforcement will not. Law enforcement would be handed all the data that they would normally collect, and now they have something that they can do their analysis, follow up with the boater, and issue citations. So we eliminated that duplication. Something else that we were asked to do the last time we met with this group was take into account that cost for law enforcement. In our first year, law enforcement stepped up. They said, you're running a pilot. Nobody really knows what to expect. And they funded it. Their contribution in 2018 was about $16,000 worth of labor, according to their reporting. In the 2019 plan, we are picking up the law enforcement cost. So we're providing funds to law enforcement so that we can get that necessary piece. And enforcement really is necessary. This whole program, the way that we check compliance really requires that law enforcement follow-up. Another change for 2019 is to issue citations. We didn't do that in 2018 for a number of reasons. But if you look at our compliance numbers, are actually, they're pretty good, 92% compliance. If you compare those to other first-time programs, that's actually not bad. But what we'd like to see is if you start issuing citations, whether we can have an impact on that compliance rate. Our belief is that you will. Issuing citations puts more skin in the game for the public, and it tells the public that you're interested in making this program work.
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify, so the model that you're going to use in 2019 for being able to write these citations so that they're upholdable, are you basically going to set up basically kind of sting operations where you're going to have somebody planted out the station? Because catching them after the fact, it sounds as though we wouldn't have any ability to enforce that citation. Basically, without the deputy physically seeing them put the boat in the water without having an inspection prior to, that'd be the only way to have the best chances of actually having the citation have weight in enforcement, versus if a rover catches a trailer there's no tag on it, if we write a citation on that, we'd have a hard time proving whether the boat was in the lake, not in the lake, without spending the whole day waiting for the boat to come back. Just, kind of a economical side of doing it. I just looking to see what your guys' thoughts of how you're going to pursue that.
Well, first of all, Greg Kreiser is here. I think he can speak to that. What we did recently is we formed a kind of a cross-functional advisory group so that we could work issues such as that. My understanding, and Greg can correct me if I'm wrong, is that as currently issued, this ordinance requires you identifying a person. Now, you can do that from a variety of ways. You can physically see the person, you can collect data about them, you can do an enforcement follow-up that suggests, talks to the boater, and they'll admit to it. There's a number of things. At this point, we haven't issued any citations in 2018, and so I believe there's more work to be done.
We just can't treat it like a parking, that's what we learned through this process, is that we can't treat it like a parking ticket. We know that we need to have a connectivity to the actual individual that is, I guess, committing the violation.
It is.
That's where we're struggling right now with it. I mean, because
Right.
from a philosophical level, this is great. We're just trying to figure out how can we get to this next level to actually make the ordinance enforceable.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
The next important objective for 2019 is the money, the dollars that we got from the Initiative Foundation, that's a one-time thing. And those dollars were provided to Wright County because we were doing something innovative with our state aid to counties. That's going to go away. And for ourselves and for any other county implementing this, you have to make it cost-effective. Now, we believe that this is much more cost-effective than at the ramp. And so what we want to demonstrate is, as you add lakes into this program, what is the impact of that? How much of that available capacity can you capture? And what is going to be your total cost? Like any budget, this program, fundamentally is going to rise or fail on how well you are at managing that budget and managing those costs. And you will have to make decisions. You can't, for example, say within Wright County, I'm going to spin up, 7 of these things. Because there are lakes that don't have the same characteristics. There's just not enough volume to be able to warrant and justify that. So the work of Soil and Water and their partners is to find out, where is that dividing line? Where can you make this cost effective? Where is it best deployed? It is not the only answer to doing inspections, but it has a place at the table. Other things that we're going to do, we'll develop an application for the rovers. Again, the rovers are going out to the landing. They're checking for compliance. In 2018, they were doing this on paper forms, and then we were collating that and entering that data. And in 2019, they'll have a tablet application. And that application is meant to solve a number of issues. One is you'll get better data integrity. The second and very exciting part about that is you'll have real-time information about what seals you issued and has this seal been used before. So one of the concerns we have is, are we getting people reusing their certificate of inspection and trying to get, multiple takes on that. The application program will detect that. The rover will know in real time. They can issue a citation or do a follow-up with law enforcement. Exit inspections is quite a popular topic. It's one of the things you get with at the ramp inspections, and it's one of the things that we can't afford to do moving forward, because again, if you're doing exit inspections, but you're only getting to 4 or 10% of the boats that are using the lake, you're not really stopping anything from leaving the lake, much as you're not stopping it from going in. So we can take a look at regional exit inspections, and they're a little bit harder. There's more issues to deal with, and one of the components that's been recommended to us is to take a look at what changes would you make to the state statute to make exit inspections more doable. So we're going to take that advice. It's one of the learnings of this program. Let's take this back to the legislature and say, well, look, if you could make these changes, this whole thing would be more enforceable. For example, if you change the state statute to make the owner of the equipment co-liable, which is what you do in a parking ticket, then enforcement gets easier. So there are some some things that we can't accomplish in 2019. It's a broader thing, but we can take this learning, we can put it in the hands of the legislature, and we can ask them to look into it. We can say, look, if you give us this, you have this wonderful program. And then the last thing is we're going to continue working on training and supervision of the staff. On some levels, supervision gets a little easier if you have everybody located on one site. So we want to be able to tap into that. We want to improve the inspections. We want to make sure that if you take the time to drive to the inspection site, that you get the best possible inspection. So we've got some ideas for improving that overall training process. So let's talk some numbers. In 2019, we've got a proposed budget. Some of these numbers you've seen before, and there have been some modifications since the last time we were here. The first thing I'll point out is there's no county contribution to this at all. It's partly a reflection of the budget situation we find ourselves in, partly because we can not worry about 2019 in terms of county money, because today we have the Initiative Foundation dollars. Something else that changed is the Lessard-Sams Committee recommended extending all the IF projects by 1 year. So for us, that means an additional year of funding. So we factored that in, and we're using that Initiative Foundation dollars. That still needs to be approved by the legislature. So again, if that doesn't happen, then, we go back, take a look at this again, but we've got the approval from Lessard-Sams.
How many more slides do you have?
Two.
Two more slides.
Okay.
If you look at the incomes side, you'll see strong contributions from the lake associations. Lake associations are providing as much funding into this program as you're getting in state aid. And that's an important piece of this effort. And and you're getting contributions from lakes that didn't contribute to their own at-the-ramp monitoring, because they see this as actually doable. They see this as a possibility, particularly if you're a small lake. There's nothing you could do, but a small lake, you add them into the program, there's virtually no load. So it's all benefit for the cost of a sign and a little bit of enforcement you can get in. The expense side, we've included the supervision administration into our expense side. We have, again, the decontamination for 2019. We're picking up the tab for all of the decontamination in Wright County. We're using that. You can see on the enforcement side, again, for 2018, our enforcement cost was a little over $16,000. And in 2019, and we've also changed their role, so we've reduced some of the amount of time that they're doing. We've taken on the warnings at the rover level. So pretty much the law enforcement costs, there are some things that we're driving that down. And we've provided $63,000 towards law enforcement. So we'll learn in 2019, how well does that work? What kind of enforcement do you get for that budget? And my last slide, small applause. Just a reminder that 2019 is fully funded. We've got a working budget. We can make this happen in 2019. with the lakes and the enforcement and the other improvements that we've been asked to make. We believe that this group and Soil and Water should propose to the DNR that for 2019, all lakes that fit within the guidelines, the DNR guidelines to join this, should be available to be included in the program. And then we'll go out to those lakes and we'll ask them to participate, we'll ask them to make a corresponding contribution. It's my understanding that that approach, not having a complete list today, will be acceptable to the DNR. That might be a follow-up question to them. As I said before, we already have 5 additional lakes ready to participate, and these are your high-volume lakes. And so we're going to get some load added into the system, which we believe we need. We believe that 2019 will tell Wright County, will tell other counties within the state whether we have the ability to scale, whether, what adding these additional lakes does what we expect it to do. And we're going to learn in 2019 for enforcement. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks.
Mr. Chair, I just want to make a quick statement. Everyone in this room, whether you are opposed to this or support this, I want everybody to realize that Chris Hector and his group, they put an enormous amount of time they're not compensated to do this. They're doing this because they really care about the lakes. So I just want to make that statement. I mean, whether you're opposed to the program itself, their efforts that they want are good for the lakes, and recognize that these guys have put an enormous amount of time in. I'm amazed at the amount of information and things that you've gone through to try and protect our lakes. So I just want that to be recognized.
All right, so then you're done, Chris? Luke, did you have something you need to add?
We're set for now, so if you want to.
Okay. I'm just wondering, you're okay?
You want to take these?
Well, why don't we,
Some water.
well, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who want to speak, but I'm wondering if DNR would
I'm gonna get some water.
take the mic and provide us with some comments on what your thoughts are regarding this 2019 plan. And just because I want to put you guys on the spot, I need you to come up.
Up here,
I need you to come up here.
up here, please.
Okay. Maybe they could just, carry you. I don't know, what are those? See them on TV. Waves or something? And then if you would state your name and...
So I'm Ann Pierce, and I am the Deputy Director for the Division of Ecological and Water Resources. And so, can you repeat your questions? Because I was trying to get up as I was listening to you.
I guess we would like DNR's thoughts on the 2019 plan that's been presented today. Maybe it's a little premature since you might have just seen it for the first
Yeah.
time. But what is DNR's thoughts on this regional program since you've had a little bit of time to study it?
Yep. So we've said this at the beginning of this project, but this is the first local unit of government that has actually tried to implement what is written in statute. And so this is, for us, this is an opportunity for us to get a lot of information because the statute is written with language that doesn't give you, sometimes statutes have very rigid ideas of what you can and cannot do. This statute doesn't have all that. It has requirements, but they're pretty broad. So this is giving us an opportunity to see what you can do and what works well and what doesn't work well. And we really appreciate all the work that, the collaborative work that we've been doing with the group to try to move this forward. We just got the draft plan probably a little more than a week ago. On Thursday. So we're in the process of reading through that and seeing, are there pieces in there are all the pieces in the plan that we need to analyze what was effective, what we need to do differently, those kind of things. And if they aren't, can we get them and get the plan completed? We haven't gotten to that point yet. So we're still in the review of the plan for this year, and we're moving through that. I can't comment on what was proposed for 2019. To be honest, we're still trying to figure out what 2018 and the end of 2017 looked like, and do we have enough information and that kind of stuff. But I can say that we want to continue to work with the county and sit down as we move through what we have right now, and if there's desire to continue to sit down and figure out how we can work together and do that.
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
yep.
does the DNR intend to, because I understand that this is there's a lot of administrative barriers to this in terms of this data collection. Does the DNR have any intent to step up their help in at any capacity to facilitate this, so making it that much more palatable to continue the program? Because at this point, the administrative costs to this are astronomical, especially when you divide it out on a per-like basis just to collect data, and a lot of it's driven by the DNR, and we're just looking to see what support you guys could offer in that capacity.
Yep, and so the data that we're requiring is standard data and data that we need specifically for this type of program to understand the pieces of that and what the limitations are for how it's set up, what the limitations are not. But then there's also a set of data that's required no matter what. Any kind of inspection has to have the data that's being required also. We, at this point, I think, we're not sitting pretty with our budget as it is. So actually the fund that our money is coming from is in a deficit. So we're not really in a position at this point. We've eliminated some of the grants that we already had, which were for lake invasive species aquatic management grants. We did have some grants that did work on inspections. At this point, we don't have that base kind of funding to have anymore.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask another question? Does the DNR have any intent in partnering with the Wright County Sheriff's Department in enforcement then, if they're not willing to be able to offer any facilitation in the administration side? I know after the start that we were kind of left alone on the enforcement piece last year. I'm looking to see if the DNR has had any change of heart in terms of wanting to embrace the program, at least on an enforcement level.
So with any delegation order, and this is the existing delegation orders that come into play no matter what type of program you're doing, the enforcement is up to the local unit of government. We do have enforcement officers that at times can make it to those calls, but cannot always make it to those calls. We don't have a large number of enforcement officers that would be able to focus on one county or one program. And so as with every delegation order, which is signed no matter how you're doing it, whether you're doing it at the access or a regional delegation order, that is part of that delegation agreement.
And this delegation order, I guess, is part of the DNR's general rules? I'm just trying to get where this delegation order comes
No,
from.
in statute, we are allowed to delegate our authority to local units of government. And that's what that is.
So you're basically saying it's a kind of a mandate then for that, if we act this law, that we would be mandated then to enforce it because the DNR is not going to facilitate it.
As part of what is agreed upon through that delegation of the authority to do this, that comes along with it, yes.
Will they delegate us the authority to do it in whichever means we see fit to do it?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I mean, will we get some more latitude and to be able to enforce it in the means by we see fit? I mean, that's why I find it's like, it's delegated to us, but yet we have to ask for your approval in what manner that we do it.
Yep,
Yeah, that's where it kind of seems kind of,
So you're being delegated the authority that's written in statute, and so that authority is standard whether the DNR is enacting it or a local unit of government.
I understand that part, but yet we still have to ask for, you delegated this authority for us to enforce it, but yet we have to ask our permission by how we're going to administer this program. That's where it's kind of, you give us the power, but you don't give us the power.
Well, we're giving the power that the legislature has directed to the DNR, so it has to be in the same manner that we are enforcing it. So those have to be, because we're delegating our authority, which has to mimic our authority.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Commissioner Potter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to have Chief Deputy Hoffman address the issue that just came up, because I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding on whose authority is whose and what responsibilities are whose. And Chief Deputy is standing right behind you, and if you give him a chance to.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, and the public, and of course, Soil and Water. We've been working with the Soil and Water and the associations on this aquatic invasive species ordinance now for going on 2 years. Prior to adopting this ordinance, the duties and responsibilities strictly fell upon the Department of Natural Resources for this. When the county adopted this ordinance roughly a year and a half ago, we had, I believe it was a deputy director of Department of Natural Resources came out here and stated that it was now the county's responsibility to enforce this ordinance. Being new to it, we just said, okay, and we did it for the last year. I think everyone in the room can agree that the current model, the 2018 model of the enforcement, is not sustainable. The Wright County Sheriff's Office and Wright County cannot do this alone. The Department of Natural Resources has to be involved with not only the process, the structure of this, but also the enforcing actions of this. Statutorily, there's been some assumptions made on the duties and what they can and can't do. 84.027 is the power and duties of the Commissioner of the Department of Natural Resources. Basically talks about how they're in charge of all the public lands, parks, timbers, waters, you name it, all that kind of fun stuff. And I apologize, I'm going to be really dry here for 2 minutes, so bear with me.
What was the statute on that one, Todd?
Minnesota State Chapter 84.027, powers and duties. Second statute I'm going to refer to real briefly is 84.028. It's called the Commissioner of Natural Resources Specific Assignments. Conservation officers shall continue to have the powers and duties of the game wardens as they existed before July 1967. These include conservation instructional activities and the enforcement of laws relating to resource management, which the commissioner shall direct. That's that one. Now we get into the invasive species statutes, which is 84D.02, Invasive Species Management Program for aquatic plants and wild animals. The commissioner shall establish a statewide program to prevent and curb the spread of invasive species of aquatic plants and wild animals. Jump down a management plan. That's sub 3. The commissioner shall prepare and maintain a long-term plan which may include specific plans for individual species and actions for the statewide management of invasive species, aquatic plants, and wild animals. And then it says the plan must address, and it comes up some other things, participation by lake associations, local citizen groups, and local units of government in the development and implementation of local management efforts. Okay, that's basically what we're doing today, right? All right. So 84D.105, inspection of water-related equipment. And that's basically, I believe, how our ordinance is kind of wrapped around as we talk about the equipment, water equipment. Compliance with aquatic invasive species inspection requirements is an express condition of operating or transporting water-related equipment. An inspector may prohibit an individual from placing or operating water-related equipment in the waters of the state if the individual refuses to allow an inspection of the individual water-related equipment or refuses to remove and dispose. Anyways, all right, so conservation officers or licensed peace officers may utilize check stations in locations or in proximity to locations where watercraft or other water-related equipment is placed into or removed from waters of the state. Any check station shall be operated in a manner and minimize delays to vehicles, equipment, and their occupants. Okay, there again, we're talking about our ordinance here. Commissioner may require mandatory inspection of water-related equipment before a person places or removes a water-related equipment into and out of a water body. Inspection stations may be located at or near public water accesses or in locations that allow for servicing individual of multiple water bodies. The commissioner shall ensure that the inspection stations, and it goes on to a list of things. All right, it also talks about the commissioner may authorize tribal and local governments that enter into a delegation agreement with the commissioner to conduct mandatory inspections of water-related equipment at specific locations within a defined area. Again, what we're talking about today. And it goes into adequate enforcement capacity. So, 84D.13 is enforcements and penalties of those related statutes. Enforcement, unless otherwise provided, this chapter and rules adopted under section 84D.12, which we just talked about, may be enforced by conservation officers. Okay, sub 3, criminal penalties. A person who violates provisions of sections 84D.03 or 84D.06 through 84D.11, which we're operating under 84D.08 or 9, whatever it was. I just talked. Anyways, it's in that deal. Is it guilty of a misdemeanor? So, without our ordinance, there is already a state statute that makes this a misdemeanor level offense, which conservation officers are allowed to issue misdemeanor citations. So I understand that this is a large issue. It's a large issue outside of the Wright County Sheriff's Office. We do not have the capability of enforcing a countywide ordinance on invasive species. We just do not have the manpower. Nor, per statute, is it really within the realm of a public safety entity being the sole enforcement agency for a natural resources issue. We spent a couple hours the other day talking about a public safety issue, child protection cases. We talk about, criminal sexual assault cases. Is this the best use of resources to have the sheriff's office doing this? There was also a concern about some of the numbers that were associated with this. We don't have extra staff at the sheriff's office waiting to investigate the aquatic invasive species. Last year, actually 2018, we didn't know how it was going to affect the sheriff's office. So we said, hey, let's give it a try. And there were no citations issued. The length of time it took to investigate, not to a citation, but just to investigate, was comparable to a domestic disturbance call that a deputy went on. So as much time as it took for an officer to respond to a domestic disturbance at somebody's house or at a business or whatever was the same length of time it took to do an initial investigation of aquatic invasive species. Is that what we want to do ongoing with law enforcement? So we came up with a plan. Let's take it outside of the deputy's preview and do it with our park rangers. Again, our park rangers have other duties. So if we want to continue on with this ordinance, if that's it, county board's decision, that'd be great. But we propose to handle it like a contract city. if this organization wants special enforcement on a ordinance, which we're allowed to do, let's treat it as a contract city. We came up with a number roughly 90-some thousand. I forgot my email. I thought I had it.
Well, they had put in 63,000 as part of their budget.
Yeah. So we presented to this board with Alicia here, that it was $95,412.80 as a contract for 2019. Now, I was surprised when I saw the email just the other day that we're down to 63,000. For contracted services, the Wright County Sheriff's Office is saying we will have to charge $95,412.80 to perform those non-statutorily required duties to enforce this ordinance. And that was only for the 4 original lakes plus 5 additional lakes. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. The other thing that you're not even considering is when we start issuing citations and then somebody pleads not guilty, then the officer has to go in and go to court and
Yeah, and again, this is still a pilot project, so we said, this is gonna be the first year for enforcing it, so as a base, and I should clarify this, these type of contracts is with the county board. So if the county board wants to enter into a contract with this organization for sheriff's office duties to enforce an ordinance, similar to what we do with the local cities, the sheriff's office is recommending $95,412.80 as that contract for 2019. And again, and that is only for those 9 lakes. Anything above that, of course, would change. So I'm not here to argue the validity of this ordinance, but I'm letting you know that, again, we can't do this alone. The DNR has to be involved, otherwise I can't have my deputy spending this much time on an invasive species ordinance.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Did anybody have any questions for Chief Deputy?
Mr. Chair, Chief Deputy Hoffman, is the DNR at least facilitating any training at no charge to us for implementing this and helping us being able to for our deputies better to enter into these type of situations?
We work very closely with the Department of Natural Resources. So I want to get out, we work every day, our deputies work with them every day. This specific issue, I think we need to work better at this issue. There is training available. I believe we've even talked with Alicia about training some of our staff. Again, it is the opinion of the sheriff's office that this really shouldn't be a deputy's role in investigating this. We have non-licensed individuals within the sheriff's office that the county board gave special deputy powers, which basically allows to issue them citations to better and more cost-effectively work at some of this stuff, if it's the board's decision to keep going this route. As far as deputies, again, we are highly encouraging the county to steer away from licensed officers with this ordinance.
That 93,000 you talked about, is that using the special park rangers and not a deputy?
Seasonal special deputies, correct.
Okay.
Park rangers.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Questions?
Just to the DNR.
Yeah, I just want to make sure nobody, any questions of Chief Deputy? Nope. Thank you. Thanks, Todd. DNR, I guess one of the commissioners has a question.
I'm going to stretch my bounds here a little bit, but at 1:30 after this meeting, we have a
Charlie, pull your mic towards you so they can.
At
people can
1:30
hear.
this afternoon, we have a ditch meeting regarding ditch 31, and I'm just wondering if you would be able to stick around for that. No, I'm serious.
I'm sure you are serious, but unfortunately, I wouldn't be of any help because I'm I'm working on this issue, and we would have to have somebody
It's a little
else. or is
different,
it- it's
different department.
than-
It's not
yep.
anybody that you, reports to you or
Yep.
anything. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
I just want to say, as far as, you know, the law enforcement piece, the piece that I think we're discussing here is the enforcement of the ordinance piece. And, you know, the issue that is coming up here is the enforcement of the ordinance piece. And we would love to sit down and talk this through, but there's not, you know, I don't have any proposals in front of me or anything like that that I've been able to look like at that I could even speak to at this point, so.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I mean, I struggle with the DNR. I mean, if you pull up the statistics, I'm willing to bet that you got the DNR conservation officers who are primarily charged with protecting our natural resources have duplicated our efforts with our sheriff's department in terms of public safety. I mean, we put water patrols out there to make sure that there's life jackets and there's throwable devices out there. But your DNR conservation officers have written numerous of those violations and very few AIS inspections. So my question is what is the DNR doing to focus their field agents on the concentration of prevention of the preservation of our natural resources? We're allocating funds to do our duties mandated to public safety. We're asking, what is the DNR going to do for its protection of natural resources, which you're charged with doing?
And you really need to speak into that mic. The mic is
Yep.
terrible.
Okay, hopefully I can be heard. You know, I think where the issue is here is talking about the enforcement of an ordinance. And for the DNR, public safety and natural resource enforcements are priorities. So I think, you know, we can have some conversations with our enforcement and the sheriff's office, which I know they do. They do work together. So I think we need to continue those pieces.
Okay. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just had a couple things, 'cause I actually do have to leave here pretty quick, so I just have a couple things to put out before I go. Is that all right?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Alicia and Luke, do you guys have anything more that you're going to be presenting at all?
No,
Just for 18 and, yeah, but questions now.
just question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a letter from a constituent of mine that could not make it to the meeting today. I did give it to Lee to include in part of the, as part of the record, but he is basically opposed to expanding the program until some things kind of getting ironed out, and I guess that's where I wanted to dovetail into his letter, and I can pass that down, you guys can have it. But until, when the initiative money dries up, what are you gonna do? And until that answer is resolved, I don't see expanding this program. Until we know where our funding's gonna come when the initiative money dries up, and then if you can answer that, it would be, I would have a different decision, but it has to be, where's that money gonna, who's gonna replace that money? Because I don't want coming back to the county, we don't have the funds for it, and that's what I think is gonna happen. I don't see a reason for the taxpayers that aren't on lakes and don't have this, that everybody else has to pay. And I know there's the argument, oh, we're taxpayers and it's gonna lower our tax base with the inspection and all this, but I think we need to come up with a funding source once the AIS money dries up. So that's my point. Thank you.
Okay. And there's a few of us that have gotten email letters and stuff like that, so we'll just pass those on so that they get put into the public record. How many people want to speak? Oh, that's not too bad.
There's more hands coming up. We just have to have an idea because
Yeah, we do have another meeting at 1:30, so we will have to get this ended. I'm just wondering, is that maybe we'll take a 10-minute break, and then those that are interested in speaking, line up by the podium, and when we come back,
Chair, why don't we have them write their name on this pad?
That's a good idea.
Yep, good
They
idea.
won't have it.
Put them up there on the
Yep. Okay.
Put him right there and we'll give it to the chair. You can call him.
Oh, for those, okay. All right.
We'll have them.
All right.
So we'll be back here in 10 minutes. Everybody sit down, please. We'll be heading back to
So is that, which meeting is it?
getting this going again.
I've never got any emails. Is he giving a presentation on it? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just not got up to speed on that one just because I've had so many issues with it.
All right, I want to thank everybody for their patience. We have a number of people that want to speak. Because of our next meeting at 1:30, I'm going to have to limit everybody's speech to 15 seconds so that we can get everybody through. I'm serious, I mean, gee whiz. No, anyway, I just ask that you be respectful of other people, and at about 3 minutes, I'll start waving my hand saying, move it on, or whatever. So the first one up here is the mayor of Annandale, Dewey Gunderson?
Honorable.
Correct.
Honorable Dewey.
Easy now. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dwight Gunnerson, but everyone calls me Dewey. I'm the mayor of Annandale. I've been a lifelong resident of Annandale for 44 years. I've appreciated our lakes and been an avid user for our lakes for those 45 years. I think what's quite evident from our standpoint is the city of Annandale, even though we're supporters of this program by providing the land for the facility, and mind you, the piece of land that they are using is within our industrial park, and it's on a very challenging site that would be very challenging for development. So it's kind of an easy decision for us to contribute that land for the time being for this project. Over the past 40 years of my life, I think we've all heard about invasive species and how they're affecting our community. Thing is, over the past 5-10 years, we've learned that some of these invasive species are pretty nasty, and they yet don't have remedies to determine how to handle them. I think the issue that we need to be talking about is the essence of time. I think we've got budgets that we're dealing with. We certainly have two sides of the story, and it sounds like that this program for the foreseeable future might be finite. So I think what we need to be talking about is what can we best do with the time that's available. From the city's perspective, I would call us conscientious observers. I think we are very concerned about our lakes. This shy of a century, our tagline has been Heart of the Lakes. We have nearly a couple dozen lakes within a 7-mile radius, so the lakes are an important part of our community and our economy. We need to figure something out on how to handle these invasive species, and we need to do it quick. On the other side, we have hundreds, thousands of sportsmen that enjoy our lakes. And this program has caused them an immense inconvenience, which has caused them to go to other lakes that aren't implementing this program, which has caused a tremendous negative effect on the Annandale area economy. I wish I could give you numbers. I don't have those numbers, but I can certainly tell you by the owners of our bait shops and our gas stations that they certainly have felt the impact of how this program has affected Annandale. I think both sides are right, okay? And I think that what needs to happen is if we assume that this program only has a finite lifespan due to budgets, I think that both sides need to come together, those that are for it and those that are against it, and need to kind of hash this out in a little bit better format than just being like this. We're concerned, but we understand both sides. The thing that is going to really, I think, affect how we continue to participate is the results that is being produced by both sides and the cooperation by both sides. I I think right now the only answer for our local economy, if this program continues to go forward, is the playing field needs to be leveled. If there's 3 lakes, if this continues to be isolated to those 3 lakes, I think our local economy is going to continue to be hit. However, if it expands, then the sportsmen within that area know that, okay, this is the area that we have to deal with, and the detriment effects get spread out all over, which I hope would lessen the impact on the negative impacts of our local economy. We're for this program, but we want to continue to see results like everyone else. That's all I got.
Mr. Chair, is the expansion that they're proposing, is it large enough to make it not feel isolated to the detriment of Annandale?
My opinion, no. I think the only way that this is where you're going to really level the playing field of a program like this is if it's statewide.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dewey, just one quick thing
Yes.
too. If you really want to know, contact the Department of Revenue. They keep track of sales taxes, and that would help tell you from 2017 to 2018 if there is an actual impact for the city of Annandale.
Yep, numbers don't lie, but I got a lot of friends that are sportsmen, and I got a lot of friends that own businesses that relate to sportsmen.
I know, but that's just one way to have a definitive
What the
amount.
Well, I think yeah, there is certainly an impact that is going on.
There's no doubt in my mind, no doubt in my mind.
All right, thank you.
All right. No, I see that we have a few people that are on COLAs.
I got one final statement that this was my power line.
Yep, you want to get,
Sure. I think the option of doing nothing is not the answer. That's what I want to end with.
I see we have a few people from some same lake associations and COLAs. And in the interest of time, I think not everybody's going to be able to speak today, I'm afraid. But can I have Joe Scheider from the president of the Minnesota COLA? I'm assuming you'll be speaking on behalf of most of the COLA out there? COLA stand,
Coalition of Lake Associations.
correct? Your name and
Yep.
why don't you state for louder what the COLA stands for?
My name is Joe Schneider. I'm the president of the Minnesota COLA. I also.
And you do need to speak right into that mic.
Okay. I'm going to get down here.
Yeah? Go ahead, get relaxed, no problem.
So my name is Joe Schneider. I'm the president of the Minnesota COLA, the Minnesota Coalition of Lake Associations. Mr. Chair and members of the board, I have spoken with you before. But today I'm representing Minnesota COLA, and we're represented here in the audience by a number of visitors from counties as far north as Bemidji and Otter Tail and Itasca and Becker, as well as local counties of Wright and Stearns, and then those closer to the Twin Cities of Hennepin and Carver. We've been following and supporting this important initiative and the leadership that Wright County has shown to try something different. And right now, several other counties around the state are watching this program and considering their own AIS regional inspection programs. Those of us that have played in the AIS space for a number of years know a few things for certain. And the first one is the DNR is not going to protect the lakes in your county. As much as you want them to take responsibility and do this for you, it simply is not possible. They develop the programs and have some of the staff to do the AIS inspections across the county and across the state. These programs are based on the assumption that by educating the public, they will understand the risks. They will be personally responsible to do the right things. Clean, drain, and dispose is their tagline for this. And if they do that, then all will be right in the lakes in Minnesota. But unfortunately, that isn't been working, and it isn't working now, and all is not right for the lakes in Minnesota. And if it wasn't for the efforts of concerned citizens pushing the state and the local governments, the AIS problem in our public waters would be much worse than it is today. Minnesota COLA, along with Minnesota Lakes and Rivers Advocates, Jeff Forrester's organization, developed the data to show how much was being spent by local government units and volunteers across the state. And that analysis and the associated work with the legislature led to the $10 million that gets given to the counties every year by the state. So there is significant interest in helping to do the right thing. The second thing that we know is that the DNR's data point about 7% of the lakes in Minnesota having aquatic invasive species makes the problem sound small and manageable. Sorry, my glasses keep falling as I'm leaning down here. But it's not a small and it's not a manageable problem. If you look beneath those numbers, you'll get a very different understanding. The reality is that virtually all the state's largest and most popular lakes have invasive species. Of the 10 biggest lakes in Minnesota, 9 of them have one or more of invasive species. That's a 90% problem. And these vast AIS-infested lakes include names that you recognize, like Lake of the Woods, Rainy, Upper Red, Leech, Mille Lacs, Winnebagosh, Vermilion, Cabotegama, and Pepin. 5 of these 10 lakes have spiny water fleas, 4 have zebra mussels, 3 have Eurasian water milfoil, and 2 have starry stonewort. Data from the metro area where I live is also telling us it's not a 7% problem. The 159 largest lakes in the 7-county area cover 52,000 acres. You'll find Eurasian water milfoil in 53% of the lakes and 83% of the surface area. You'll find zebra mussels in 11% of the lakes and 51% of the surface area. So the AIS, stopping the spread of AIS is not happening. The third thing we know is that education and awareness does not translate into changed behaviors, and we need changed behaviors to stop the spread of AIS.
You've got 4 minutes so far.
Okay, I will be done in 1. What we do know is that community-based, we do know that we have to couple education and awareness with prompts and incentives to get the behavior change we want. We can do that. Your mandatory AIS regional inspection is one of those prompts and one of those incentives. And you couple that with education and you now have a change. So I'd like to leave you with 2 takeaways. You may want this to be a DNR problem, you may want them to be responsible, and you aren't alone. I can tell you that county commissioners all over the state are saying the same thing. But if you don't take action at a local level, your AIS problem is going to get worse, and it's going to get worse faster. Your regional AIS program represents the best value for prevention, and it forces the behavioral change we need to stop the spread. As I've said to you every time I've spoken to you, I want to thank you for your leadership on this important pilot effort. I'm going to abuse a line from Star Trek, but you've boldly gone where no LGU has gone before. I hope you continue to lead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kendall,
That's close enough.
what?
It's Kubosh, actually, thank you.
Kubosh?
And I'll start my timer because I'm going to do my absolute best to be done in 3 minutes.
Thank you.
I have lake property near Howard Lake, Minnesota, on Lake Mary. It's a Wright County lake. I'm proud of my lake. I'm proud of my lake association. And before I say anything else, I'm proud of all these people who take such courage in their conviction to step forward and do these things. And I'm on the exact same page that you are. If I could wave a magic wand, I would eliminate them all in a second. But I do have these things to say in opposition to the way the current program is going. Numbers like 1.27 million. Sayings like the capacity of these things will never be 100%. A stoplight at an intersection does not have a 100% capacity. To say, we want to fill this thing up, will never happen. It's an argument, but I don't think it's a very valid one. Most frequent person that used it 7 times last year. So that means in all the 6 months of boating on there, the only license plate that repeated itself the most was 7 times. That doesn't show a lot of use. There were 429 violations last year, and it cost $57,000 to police it. $16,000 of that was the county, and the rest of it was the amount they paid the people that went around and checked the tags. Not a very economical way of doing things. This next year, they're proposing $61,000 in sheriff's costs, or with the special deputies, or whatever they're talking about it, to collect what in fines? You don't necessarily have enforcement to pay for itself with fines, but I'm wondering what kind of numbers will be there. It's going to cost $242,000 to open it this next year. That's a lot of money. My observations from last year, I found the staff friendly. They were. But on opening day, which was a nice opening day, there's not a lot of nice opening days. This last year was a nice, sunny, not windy, not typical Minnesota fishing opener. Between 5 and 11 a.m., they had checked 12 boats for those 3 lakes. Now, most of those lakes, other years on opening, would have 20, 30, 40 boats at each one of those landings. Where were they, or why weren't they there, okay? The interviews with people that I did as they left. Hi, how did it go? Oh, just fine, no problems. I was in, I was out. I said, well, are you going to come back? Oh, I'll never come back again. So they were coming once and leaving because they don't like the program. We were misled last time, or in the original part of this, we were told, I as a taxpayer was told a lot of this was going to be staffed by volunteers. However, every time I went to the inspection point, they were all paid people that were there. I don't know what happened between the one and the other, but there's some things that are just not quite fitting the picture. Don't throw it out the window. Do something, but maybe find a way that you can take all these 1.27, $65,000, $57,000, $247,000. Pick one lake, pick one chemical or one natural thing that will get rid of one of these species. Focus on one thing and get one thing done right. And I'll be right there behind you. 2 minutes and 56 seconds. Thank you, and I'm leading this way because it's easy.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. Again, we're not going to be able to get to everybody. So I'm going to, Jeff Burns from Wright SWCD. I know you have some opinions regarding this too.
I will be very brief. I got here a little bit early as you were talking, Commissioner Potter, about not wanting to kick a can down the road. We have the same problem here. I got onto the internet this morning and looked at the aquatic invasive species list from neighboring states. Minnesota listed 27 invasive plants and animals. Not so good. Michigan listed 56 aquatic invasive plants and animals. Wisconsin listed 80. I think this isn't the best program, but it's the best program that we have to choose from. Thank you.
Karen? Lone? I don't have one Karen listed on here.
Karen Lon, L-O-H-N, is that correct?
L-O-H-N?
Yes. Yep. Okay. Thank you for letting me take one brief moment is all I really want to do.
Oh, there isn't.
Karen Lon, I'm the president of the Cedar Lake Conservation Club. And the statements that have been made by others already cover so much of what I want to also support. Our association works tirelessly to preserve and protect the quality of Cedar Lake. Kathy Johnsrud is our water quality chair, and I think many of you know of her work. She puts in countless hours working to inform us and help us make decisions. Our board met last January, having watched the 3 pilot lakes in the RIP program, saying we want to get on board as fast as we can. And so as of last January, we made a commitment as soon as the program opened up, we want to be part of it. This year, our board committed $18,000 per year for 3 years to be part of the program. That is how strongly we support this program and want to get into it. And I agree, it may not be perfect, but it is the program we have, and we want to join it. Thank you.
All right, we're going to have what time for one more person? Kevin Farnham? Kevin?
Can I, that's me, can I yield mine to Jeff Forrester from Lakes and Rivers Advocate, who was on that list? He's come a long way. You've heard from me before about Coronas and the cost.
Yeah, that's fine. So Jeff Forrester from Minnesota Lakes and Rivers.
So my name is Jeff Forster, and I'm Executive Director of Minnesota Lakes and Rivers. It's a statewide organization, so I'm kind of in touch with what's kind of happening around the state and other states as well. I've heard some talk that this maybe isn't the best program, but it is based on programs in other parts of the country that have been working very well. Similar programs are in the Pacific Northwest, the 5 states of the Pacific Northwest and the 5 provinces in Canada have no AIS, and they have a similar regional inspection program. This is kind of the model. We have to figure out how to make it work within Minnesota statute. There's research, I served on the statewide AIS advisory committee. I think 4 years ago, we came out with a study that said the DNR can't do this alone, the counties can't do it alone, lake associations can't do it alone, it's going to take partnerships. This is an example of that. DNR hasn't had a budget increase for AIS since, what, 89, I think, when the first tab came in, so they don't have the capacity. We realized that early on. Lake associations pressed the legislature for the county AIS prevention aid money. I believe close to $300,000 of that is going to come to Wright County next year. It was lake associations that pressed for the creation of the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center. We were the only ones to lobby on behalf of that. We pressed for funding for it. They're now involved in this process and interested in some of the ideas that are happening here. We pressed for the Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage funding for innovation grants, which are funding part of this. So lake associations have really stepped up to the plate, and in terms of the science, 2 things to offer. Peter Sorensen, who was the first director of the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center, just spent about, well, last time this year he was in the Philippines looking at the international database of fisheries in the world, and he came up with the same thing that came out of the World Wildlife Federation. 80% of the fish, freshwater fish in the world are gone, right? 80%, right? Biomass. The key areas for that are Central and South America. One of the leading causes, one of the top 3 causes for destruction of habitat for fisheries is aquatic invasive species. There's things that are coming that are worse than what we have. 1 aquatic invasive species is bad, 2 is worse than 2. It's kind of like 1 + 1 = 3 because they interact with each other. And it's very hard to fix a lake. You can't really, there hasn't been a good solution to most aquatic invasive species. So this, I think, is one of the best and most innovative programs in the state. I know that other people are looking at doing this. People talked about a statewide program, and the room applauded, and we could definitely push for that. But the data that's being produced here by this program is incredibly important to the rest of the state. Is that 3 minutes? Thank you.
All right, I do apologize that we don't get a chance to hear to everybody today, but due to time constraints, we'll have to adjourn the meeting.
No,
Well,
Chair.
yes, go ahead.
Continue this meeting until January sometime?
Well, continue, yeah, it should still get publicized and stuff too.
But continue, we're not adjourning, we're continuing.
Yeah, so there'll be more information. We have a lot of questions yet before this board can make any decisions, so again, I want to thank you all for your time. Watch the county website. There'll be information on when the next meeting will be for further discussions.
Mr. Chair, can I just offer one thing really quickly? The plan that has been presented to you is still technically draft form. It's not the final that's being submitted to the DNR. So if you yourselves have any comments, please let me know, and I potentially could incorporate those before we send it to the DNR.
So the DNR hasn't even seen the draft yet?
They've seen they received the draft on Thursday, but this is not the official to the commissioner, which it's due at the end of the year. So I have a little.
End of December?
End of December, yes. So a little bit of time, but.
Not much.
Huh? Not much, no, sir.
Okay.
So just to let you know.
Still here?
Yeah, the DNR is still
Are they
here.
going to be able to render any comments prior to our, if we meet again in January? And how much time would they need to be able to render comments on that draft?
Are you speaking about the 2019 plan?
Yes.
Please.
Sorry about that. My name, Heidi Wolf. I'm with the Minnesota DNR. I supervise the invasive species unit. So what we've received so far is the summary of the 2018 season, which also has a little bit about the 2019 season. We haven't received an actual application for a 2019 season at all. We can at least comment on the concept, but the Commissioner's Office will need to see that. And we just received the draft summary on Thursday, so there's just not been enough time for Commissioner's Office to review that or comment.
If we were meeting after the first of the year, if we'd be able to get some comments back from the DNR regarding the 2018 report as well as the potential what they're looking at for the 2019.
So, Mr. Chair, the question for Heidi would be, is sometime in January enough time for you to give a preliminary draft report or something to us?
I think we can give you at least a response or some on the 2018 summary regarding a 2019 proposal. We'd have to actually get a proposal first.
Okay, so you're talking, what, January 2nd, you can do this all? So the middle of January?
I also can't speak for the Commissioner's Office, but
So
if
the middle
we
of
have the
January,
report, we
end
are
of
looking at
January,
it.
which is best?
Later would probably be
Later.
better.
We're also transitioning, the government is transitioning January 1st. So
That's right.
basically, we have about first day until January 1st. And then things are going to start to change, and we don't know who will be there, so.
All right, so the end of January would be the soonest then. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
would it be appropriate then to set a date for when this meeting is being continued?
Well, it's ending in January. We'll have to set that later because that's too far out to predict. I
So
think.
to be continued at,
Yep, continue at a later date, sometime towards the end of January. Again, thank you, everybody, for your time. We appreciate it. We're here every Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. You're always welcome to come and visit us. There'll be one more meeting that you'll have me as chair. Next year, you have Derek Vetch as chair.